So have you ever had that feeling, that little chilling sensation that something's just not quite right? Maybe in your own home?
Or, you meet someone new, a neighbor maybe, and they seem absolutely perfect.
Yeah, too perfect.
Yeah.
And there's just this tiny voice saying, something's off.
Exactly.
Well, that's the territory we're diving into today. Secrets, closed doors,
A tenant who seems ideal on paper.
and a landlord who starts feeling this dread creeping in, a sense that something is very, very wrong.
Get ready, because we are pulling back the curtain on The Tenant by Freida McFadden.
Right.
It's one of those thrillers everyone's been talking about, and believe me, it is quite the ride. It'll definitely keep you on the edge of your seat.
The setup just grabs you immediately, doesn't it? You've got Dr. Leah Smith. She's successful. She's independent.
Mm-hmm.
Trying really hard to put a difficult past behind her. She's got this cozy duplex.
Her safe space, supposedly.
Right. And she decides to rent out the downstairs unit. In comes Ellie, a nurse. Seems perfect.
Checks all the boxes, right?
Yeah.
Respectful, quiet, clean.
But then maybe a little too clean. A bit too quiet.
And that's where McFadden just masterfully starts turning the screws. The suspense really builds.
Little things.
Yeah, tiny things at first. Leah starts noticing, well, strange noises maybe, when Ellie shouldn't even be home.
Or a door that's locked when it wasn't before.
Exactly. And that awful creeping feeling, like she's being watched. This isn't just, standard spooky stuff. McFadden really dives into that domestic setting. Nothing feels quite safe anymore.
And no one is quite who they seem.
Precisely. Is Leah's past trauma making her paranoid, or is there something genuinely sinister happening right there under her own roof?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? So our mission today really is to unpack what makes this book just so darn compelling.
Right.
We want to look beyond just the plot points and explore how McFadden does it. The intricate setup, those characters.
Oh, their characters are key.
And all the little things that make this thriller, well, sing.
Okay, so let's start with that initial setup then, because like you said, it's crucial.
Yeah.
You have Leah. She's sharp. She seems controlled, but you feel the cracks almost immediately.
You really do.
Yeah.
McFadden doesn't just tell you she's fragile from her past. You feel it. It's in her thoughts, her hesitation.
Mm-hmm. And that makes her vulnerability strangely relatable, even with her specific trauma.
It does. And then there's Ellie.
Ah, Ellie. Yes. So sweet on the surface. Soft-spoken, polite.
Almost unnervingly so.
That's the word. Unnerving. There's this placid perfection. The author is subtle, isn't she? She doesn't scream suspicious.
No, not at all.
Instead, it's these little hints, this slightly off perfection that makes you, the reader, start questioning, is Ellie hiding something dark?
Or is Leah just seeing ghosts because of her past? Is she projecting?
Exactly. And that dynamic, that tension between the seemingly perfect tenant and the landlord who's maybe starting to unravel, that's the engine of the whole unsettling atmosphere.
And it's not just them in a vacuum, right? The side characters play a big role, too.
Oh, definitely. They're not just background noise.
You've got the nosy neighbor.
The slightly sketchy Candyman.
Even Leah's own family members seem to add friction or cast doubt.
Right. Nobody gets a free pass. Everyone feels a little bit suspect at some point.
Which just ramps up that feeling of paranoia, makes you constantly reevaluate who you trust.
And this feeds directly into one of McFadden's real strengths here, the unreliable narrator aspect.
Explain that a bit for anyone not familiar.
Sure. So an unreliable narrator is basically when you as the reader can't fully trust the perspective of the person telling the story. Their credibility is shaky.
And McFadden uses Leah's past trauma brilliantly for this.
Absolutely brilliantly. Think about those early scenes. Leah hears something odd, maybe sees something out of place.
And she dismisses it. Oh, I'm just stressed, or I must be tired.
Right. McFadden plants these little seeds. Initially, you kind of go along with Leah's rationalizations. You trust her judgment. But then things escalate, and that trust starts to completely fall apart. It's a classic technique, but she executes it so well.
It really forces you to question everything. How much do we know about people, even those seemingly close? Especially if our own view might be skewed.
That's the core of it. And all these elements, the characters, the uncertainty, the unreliability, they all fuel the sheer intensity of the book.
Which brings us to the pacing. I mean, wow. This book moves.
Oh, doesn't it? It's relentless. McFadden is a master at building that page-turning momentum.
Short chapters.
Punchy endings to those chapters.
Cliffhangers galore that make it almost impossible to stop.
It's definitely one of those just one more chapter books that suddenly turns into, 3 a.m. reading sessions.
Guilty as charged. And you start double-checking your own locks.
Exactly. And something else that adds to that intensity, I think, is the setting itself. The duplex.
Ah, yeah. It's more than just a backdrop, isn't it?
Way more. When we talk about the setting acting as a character, this is a prime example. That house feels like it's part of the story.
How so?
Well, think about how McFadden describes it. It's not just walls and floors, it's the creaks that sound like whispers.
The shadows that seem too long, too dark.
Exactly. She subtly gives the house this watchful, almost malevolent presence. It feels like it's closing in on Leah.
Yeah, it becomes part of the threat, not just the place where the threat happens.
Right. It really amps up the claustrophobia, the paranoia. It's not just Ellie who feels potentially dangerous. The house starts to feel dangerous, too.
Okay, so summing up then. We've talked characters, themes, setting, pacing. The big question, is The Tenant worth picking up?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're a fan of psychological thrillers.
The twisty kind.
Yes, the really twisty kind. The kind with unreliable narrators, that chilling atmosphere built on that sort of insidious domestic dread.
And just enough paranoia to keep you guessing.
Then yes, this book absolutely delivers on all fronts.
I totally agree. And what I really appreciate is how it achieves that thrill without, resorting to excessive gore or cheap scares.
It's smarter than that.
It is. It's fast-paced, yeah, but it doesn't feel shallow. It's creepy, but it avoids the old cliches.
And the ending. Well, no spoilers, but it genuinely keeps you guessing.
Right up to the very last page. It pulls the rug out from under you.
It really does.
So we have to ask you listening, have you read The Tenant? Did it creep you out as much as it did us?
Or maybe you have your own story, a tenant, or perhaps a neighbor who just gave you the chills. Made your skin crawl.
We'd genuinely love to hear about it if you feel like sharing somewhere.
And we really encourage you to think about those themes we discussed, that blurry line between perception and reality.
Especially in these kinds of intense, close-quarters situations.
It's really a masterclass in building that kind of domestic suspense.
Definitely. Well, until our next deep dive, stay curious, keep thinking,
keep questioning,
and maybe, just maybe, keep your lights on, keep your doors locked. And absolutely keep reading.